Journalist Francis Hughes joins me for more on the crisis in Sudan. Good to have you join us.
Hello.
So just amidst the many crises and conflicts around the world, whether it's Syria, Israel, Hamas, and then Russia, Ukraine, Sudan seems to be lost in the midst, and that's, a conflict of staggering scale. Why has the world forgotten Sudan?
Firstly, I'd like just to point out that while billions of people celebrate Christmas and the birth of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, Savior, there is no Christmas celebration in Bethlehem, the very birthplace of Jesus Christ, who then was a refugee born in a stable when there was no room for the family to find shelter in Bethlehem, just outside of Jerusalem. And we have the hypocrisy of King Charles talking about humanity and talking about reaching out towards others, and not a word about the genocide being witnessed today in Gaza. I think when it comes to the Sudan, it depends exactly what you mean by there not being enough coverage or there not being enough media exposure to what's happening on the ground. My opinion would be that the mainstream media in the West is racist. Many of the governments in the West are racist, and many of those who are the leaders in the West are white Anglo-Saxon personalities who believe in white supremacy. So when it comes to Africa, unless there's oil or gas or resources that are coveted by these Western leaders, I don't think they care how many Africans, how many Sudanese, how many people in the Congo die in these ongoing military conflicts between what are basically two military juntas fighting over the corpse of Sudan to see how much land they can steal and how many of the resources that they can control. So part of it is racism, and part of it is that the people who may be financing and arming these groups is not necessarily the West, but could be other African or other regimes from Western Asia.
Mm. And what do you also make of how the African Union has been, at the very initial stage of this conflict, the African Union did try to step in terms of negotiations. But what do you now make of the silence coming from the Northern African leaders as well as the African Union?
Well, I think politically that the people who tried to resolve the dispute between these two armed camps have failed. And if you go to each individual African nation state, you will probably find they are backing one side or the other in this ongoing brutal conflict. It is not just the two military warlords and the two military juntas that are at war. There are outside agents. There are outside agencies, there are outside governments who have a vested interest to see who wins this protracted war. So until we know exactly who is backing who in the background, we won't really understand the silence from the African Union, and we won't understand the further complicity in the likes of the UN, who appear to be doing nothing to end this ongoing tragedy.
Mm. And as the conflict continues, we see more movement of refugees from South Sudan to Sudan. Could this also become a sticking point or a crisis point for Sudan if the humanitarian scale, the humanitarian scale of this crisis is not also, or the scale of humanitarian crisis is also not, it's not mitigated?
Well, absolutely. A lot of countries in Africa are already struggling economically because you've had invasion, because you've had military occupation, because you've had colonization, followed by wars of national liberation against these foreign aggressors. You have found that the global north has been built on the impoverishment of the global south. So countries like Sudan and Niger and Burkina Faso and others are still struggling from the post-colonial period, where they have been able to find and take control fully of the national resources of those countries, which should be spent on the infrastructure, on the education, the health and welfare of the people within those states. So if you have states that have been deliberately impoverished for centuries, they will struggle in order to get enough money and to build their economy going forward for the infrastructure projects and for the people and citizens of those nations. If you have a sudden influx from anywhere else of 50,000, 100,000, 500,000 or 1 million people, is going to put huge strain on what are already services that are struggling. So you're going to need accommodation, you're going to need food, you're going to need water, you're going to need treatment facilities. You're going to have a huge swathe of humanity arrive on your doorstep carrying only what they were able to lift when they were fleeing from the violence. So there's a moral imperative on the African Union, on the West, on the UN to help alleviate the suffering in the short term. And there is a moral imperative on the whole world to try and help resolve these ongoing issues so that less people suffer, less people become refugees, less people are displaced within their own country, and something like 23 to 24 million people in Sudan are already struggling to find safety and security.
I mean, really sad development in Sudan. We hope that there is, something is done about negotiations between both sides. Thank you so much for your time. Francis Hughes, a journalist.
Salam. Thank you.